The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the school's expansive football field, where the graduation ceremony was about to take place. Rows of folding chairs stretched out on the grass, filled with proud parents, teachers, and students clad in their caps and gowns, ready to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Among the sea of faces sat Jacob, a young man of about 18, his gaze steady but distant. He held tightly onto the small program in his hands, his knuckles pale from the pressure. Beside him, an empty chair remained unoccupied, drawing curious glances from those seated nearby. Whispers floated through the air. Who was supposed to sit there? Jacob's mother watched from the stands, her expression a mixture of pride and a touch of sadness she tried to hide behind a forced smile. No one had ever explained to the crowd why that seat was left vacant. The ceremony began with speeches, the principal's voice echoing across the field, congratulating the graduating class on their achievements. Jacob listened but remained quiet, his thoughts consumed by the man he had never met, his father, a veteran who had served his country but disappeared before Jacob could ever know him. No letters, no calls, no explanations, just a long absence, filled with questions and what-ifs. As the names were called, Jacob's heart pounded louder with each step, closer to his own turn. When finally his name echoed through the microphone, he rose, adjusting his cap with shaky hands. Approaching the stage, he paused, looking out at the crowd, then at the empty chair beside him. Clearing his throat, he spoke into the microphone, his voice trembling but resolute. I want to dedicate this moment to my father. Although he isn't here today, he has been with me in spirit every step of the way. A hush fell over the crowd, as all eyes turned toward the empty chair, sensing the weight of his words. Just then, a man in his early 50s, wearing a worn jacket and a faded military cap, appeared at the edge of the stage. His face was marked with lines of hardship and courage, eyes reflecting a lifetime of memories. He stepped forward slowly, catching Jacob's mother's surprised gaze as she stood to meet him halfway. The veteran paused and then nodded toward Jacob. Son, he said quietly but firmly, I'm here now. Tears welled in Jacob's eyes as the two men shared a glance that spoke volumes of lost time, missed years, and a bond that was never truly broken. The crowd watched in stunned silence, witnessing the reunion that no one expected, but everyone hoped for. The man who had been a mystery, a ghost in Jacob's life, was finally standing where he belonged, by his son's side, on the day he graduated. The ceremony resumed, but for Jacob, nothing else mattered, except the presence of the father he had waited for all his life. The empty chair was no longer empty. It was a symbol of forgiveness, hope, and new beginnings. This was just the start of their journey together, a chance to rewrite the story they had never gotten to live before. The aftermath of that unexpected reunion at the graduation ceremony was a whirlwind of emotions and unspoken words. Jacob and his father, Michael, spent the evening in a quiet corner of the reception hall, away from the crowd and the chatter. Michael's eyes held a mixture of regret and relief as he tried to bridge the years lost to silence and absence. I never stopped thinking about you, he began, voice thick with emotion. I wanted to be here so many times, but the past kept pulling me back and I was lost. Jacob listened intently, his heart torn between anger and hope. He had grown up with stories from his mother, half-truths and omissions, that left him with a hollow space where his father's presence should have been. Why now? Jacob asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why wait all these years? Michael took a deep breath and explained the realities that had kept him away, the wounds of war that lingered long after the battles ended, the struggle to find himself in a world that had moved on without him, and the shame he felt for not being the man his family deserved. He spoke of nights haunted by memories, the loneliness of survival, and the battle within to heal from invisible scars. Despite his absence, Michael had never stopped loving Jacob or his mother. I wasn't the hero I wanted to be, he admitted, but I want to be the man you need now. Over the next few weeks, Michael stayed with Jacob and his mother, slowly reintegrating into family life. There were awkward moments and silent dinners, but also small steps toward rebuilding trust. Jacob showed Michael around the town, sharing stories about his friends, his school, and his dreams for the future. Michael found joy in the simple things, helping Jacob prepare for college applications, attending community events, and walking in the park, where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. But the healing wasn't easy. Michael's PTSD often made him retreat into himself, moments of anxiety gripping him unexpectedly. Jacob learned to be patient, to recognize the signs, and to offer comfort without pressing too hard. Their bond was fragile, but growing stronger with each shared experience. One afternoon, Jacob took Michael to meet his high school counselor, who had helped him navigate his own struggles. Together, they discussed ways Michael could seek support and therapy, understanding that healing was a journey, not a destination. Meanwhile, Jacob grappled with the conflicting feelings inside him. He wanted to embrace his father fully, but feared being hurt again. He confided in his mother, who encouraged him gently, reminding him that forgiveness was a process, not an obligation. The community, too, reacted with a mix of curiosity and compassion. Some people whispered, questioning the veteran's sudden return after so many years, but many admired the courage it took for a broken man to come home and face his past. Michael also began volunteering at the local Veterans Center, sharing his story with others who struggled in silence. It gave him purpose and a chance to make amends for the years lost. Slowly, the father and son started creating new memories. Watching movies, fixing bikes, attending sports games, they laughed more than they had expected, and the empty chair at graduation became a symbol, not of absence, but of presence, resilience, and the power of second chances. Yet, both knew the road ahead would still be challenging. Healing old wounds required time, honesty, and the willingness to face the darkness together. But in that growing light, Michael and Jacob found hope, a hope that was worth fighting for. Their journey had just begun, but the bridge between them was no longer invisible. It was built on shared pain, newfound understanding, and the unbreakable bond of family. Michael had been home for nearly 3 months, and every day still felt like a fragile miracle to him. Each morning he woke up in the small guest room that Jacob's mother Sarah had cleared out for him, and for a few moments he would just lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how he had survived long enough to witness this unexpected chapter. He had missed so much: Jacob's first steps, his first words, birthdays, school plays, late-night talks, and all the quiet in-betweens that built a life. But now every conversation, every smile, every shared silence felt like a second chance he could never have asked for, but desperately needed. Jacob had gone back to school orientation, getting ready for his first semester of college, while Michael, with Sarah's help, began the paperwork to officially reclaim his identity, which had been declared lost years ago. The government process was slow, bureaucratic, and cold, but Michael endured it patiently, even when faced with blank stares from young clerks who didn't recognize the weight of his story. Sometimes he sat at the local cafe, sipping bitter coffee and scribbling in a notebook he kept in his coat pocket. He didn't write much, just fragments of thoughts, memories, and hopes he wasn't sure he was allowed to have yet. Sarah had become more open with him too. Their relationship wasn't what it once was. Too much had changed, but there was warmth in the way she smiled now, less guarded, as if part of her had waited for this moment, even when the rest had moved on. One rainy afternoon, Jacob invited his father to visit the college he would be attending. The campus was wide and green, with ivy-covered walls and bustling energy. As they walked together, Jacob explained his classes and future plans. "I want to study political science," he said, "maybe work in policy. I want to help people, like you." Michael stopped walking for a moment, caught off guard by the statement. "Like me?" he asked. Jacob nodded. "People who served, who got forgotten, people who come back and feel like they're invisible." Michael felt a deep surge of emotion rise in his chest, pride and sorrow intertwining in a way that made it hard to speak. You already make me proud, he finally managed to say. That evening, they sat together by the lake near campus, tossing small stones into the water, the ripples dancing under the golden sunset. Jacob pulled something from his backpack, a photo. It was the graduation picture, the one where Michael had unexpectedly stood beside him. Someone had captured the exact moment they looked at each other, the crowd blurry in the background, their connection crystal clear. I keep this with me, Jacob said. Not because of what you missed, but because of what you came back for. Michael couldn't respond. He just reached out and placed his hand gently on Jacob's shoulder. A few weeks later, on a quiet Sunday, Michael found himself standing outside the church he used to attend before the war. He hadn't been inside in decades, but something compelled him that day. He stepped through the doors, the scent of wood polish and old hymnals greeting him like forgotten friends. He sat in the back pew listening to the music, not because he needed forgiveness, but because he wanted peace. After the service, a few people approached him. Some remembered him, others didn't, but all treated him with a kind of reverence that felt unfamiliar. One elderly man shook his hand and whispered, "Welcome home, soldier." That night, Michael wrote a letter. It wasn't addressed to anyone specific, just to time, to memory, to the past. He folded it carefully and placed it in the box he kept under his bed, filled with old dog tags, faded photographs, and a ribbon from a medal he'd once refused to accept. He wasn't looking for recognition anymore. He was looking for reconciliation with himself, with the years he'd lost, and with the people he loved. On Jacob's move-in day, Michael helped carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs to his dorm room. They laughed as they struggled with a mini-fridge, cursed the elevator for being broken, and ordered pizza from a place down the street. Before leaving, Michael pulled Jacob into a hug. "Be proud of the life you're building," he said, "and don't ever be afraid to come back home, whatever that means." Jacob looked at him and nodded, his eyes shining. "Same to you, Dad." As Michael drove away, he didn't feel like a ghost anymore. He was flesh, blood, scars, and all. He had returned from silence and shadows into a life that had chosen to embrace him, even if it had taken years to do so. And somewhere along the way, that single chair at a graduation ceremony had become the place where everything changed.